It's eclipse season once again, with the first eclipse happening September 7th, 2025 at 14:11:50 p.m. Washington, D.C. And eclipses, if you've been watching my series on eclipses the last couple of years, you realize they're coming all the time. Every 5.5 months or so, we're getting hit with another eclipse. There's always 2 eclipses in a cycle, sometimes 3. And the effects of an eclipse are running, 4 weeks before, 4 weeks after. And when you add it all together, because there's 2 weeks between the 2 eclipses in a series, you're looking at 10 weeks of eclipse period where the eclipse is having a big say on our lives. So a lot of our year is wrapped up in these eclipses. And when they affect us, they tend to give memorable, long-term, significant effects. The one on September 7th is a lunar eclipse. That is happening at about 15 degrees tropical Pisces. So if you have anything around there in tropical Pisces, you are getting hit by this eclipse. The closer the planet, the stronger you can expect the impact. Even if you don't have anything within 5, 6, 7 degrees, anything you have in that sign you'll feel to some degree. I usually focus on eclipses that are within about 5 degrees. But I've noticed some people are very sensitive and, they find something, that seems like a big deal anytime that eclipse is in the sign. Okay. But the closer to actually being on a house cusp to being on a planet, the stronger the effect is going to be. Now, lunar eclipses are eclipses that give the fruit. So things have been in motion in your life during a period of time, and things are going to be building up now, and something's happening. Okay. And this thing that is happening is solid, it's concrete. You can't do anything about it. When an eclipse comes, you just have to let it unfold. Okay. Sometimes what's coming is that you have to make new efforts in new directions. Other times that's not even happening. Okay. So first you want to check if this eclipse is hitting you. Got anything in the middle of Pisces or in Pisces? It's affecting you to a greater or lesser degree. Okay. Then we have to look at the foundation eclipse. Eclipses happen in cycles of about 18 years where the eclipses play off each other and they have a similar theme. And so every time you get hit by this eclipse, there's an element of this theme that comes to the surface again. So you're dealing with very long-term patterns. And these cycles run 1,600 to 2,000 years long. They're very, very, very long cycles. The way we find out what the cycle is offering is we have to look at the first cycle in the series. Now, if I click down here, I can go to that first cycle. The first eclipse in this series happened June 26, 1304 at 4:11 a.m. So this cycle's been running for, over 800 years already. So by studying this first eclipse, we will be able to get an idea of what to expect during any of the eclipses in this cycle. Okay. Now the planets on the inner wheel on the screen is the chart for the actual eclipse. And the planets on the outside are for whatever eclipse I choose. So the inner planets are the chart for the eclipse, the foundation eclipse that happened 1304. And the outer chart is the eclipse that's happening currently. Okay, so for now, we're going to focus on the inner chart and examine that original eclipse from, 1304. Okay, so in that eclipse, we had the moon in the beginning of Capricorn. Okay, that's also Pushan Aditya, and that lets us know that this eclipse cycle is a cycle of learning how to get everything you need, even though there's less available. Okay, that's the nature of Pushan, to nourish, even though there's not a lot of availability for nourishment. And it helps people find the ways, develop some grit, do some inner nourishment, because maybe the outside things aren't coming. So this eclipse cycle is always going to have that theme of some restriction to what we need in our lives and having to nourish ourselves some other way, or just toughen up and deal without it. Okay. And during that original eclipse, you'll see that as always, the sun is opposite the moon. And Saturn down here in Libra is at 142. So it's making a really tight square to the sun-moon axis, to the eclipse axis, and it's making a full aspect onto the sun within 2.5 degrees. So Saturn's a big player in the eclipse. It's really interesting in that over the last few years, so many of the eclipses we've been looking at have got the sun, Saturn, moon always on angles from each other, really tightly on angles, 90 degrees sections from each other. That always indicates that there's not a whole lot we can do. All right, so whatever problems come up, there's not a lot of resolving them. This isn't an eclipse of resolving problems. This is an eclipse of any problems that show up, just dealing with it. Okay, so it's not an eclipse where you can change a whole lot. Okay, just have to bear with whatever it comes. And trying to change things, trying to fix things will usually make things work. Now, where we're lucky with this eclipse that we haven't seen in some of the recent eclipses is that in the original eclipse, we also had Jupiter over here making a nice strong aspect to the moon. They're 95 degrees apart, a little less than 95 degrees apart. So Jupiter's given a good aspect to the moon, and it's also given a decent sextile aspect to the sun. So Jupiter's helping us out here. And what that basically means is something good is always going to come from this eclipse. So you're going to have to tighten your belt in some things. There's going to be something that, there's going to be a grace to it. It's going to be something that, okay, it could have been a lot worse than it was, or at least, life was good enough to me to give this. Okay. And also this Jupiter should help people, most importantly, understand where they made their mistakes and gain the wisdom to not repeat that cycle. Okay. And the Jupiter here should keep people from trying to change whatever is happening to create more problems. Okay. Because when you see that Saturn, on angles from the eclipse axis, you always are having anything you try to tamper, it's just going to make things worse. But then people tend to tamper and make it worse. There's that saying, God give me the strength to change the things I can, to accept the things I cannot, and the wisdom to know the difference. This Jupiter is the wisdom to know the difference. So this Jupiter is going to keep a lot of people from mucking up this eclipse, and it's just not going to be as problematical as a result to that. Okay. Now, the other planets are influencing the eclipse. Let's see. We've got, the inner eclipse. All right. We've got Neptune sextiling the moon, and we have Saturn squaring the moon. Okay. When you see both of those influencing, it's letting us know that there's going to appear to be potential with this eclipse, or something will seem like, oh yeah, this has potential. This is going to make this so much better in life. It's going to give me money. It's going to give me this. And I'm working on this. And then all of a sudden the eclipse comes along and Saturn takes all that potential that Neptune was showing and it doesn't manifest. Okay. So anything you think that is a sure thing during this eclipse period where you're going to find out some things that have been moving forward and making some progress and you think you're almost there, all of a sudden, if this eclipse hits you, you might find out they really don't have that potential, and the potential fails. Neptune with Saturn is potential failing potential. Okay. Okay. The other strong influence to this eclipse, we don't have a strong Venus influence. We don't have Mars really strong or Mercury really strong. The strongest players are Saturn and Jupiter and Neptune. And let me double check Uranus here. Uranus is not that big of a player. Okay. So the biggest advisory on this eclipse cycle is that there'll be some fruits that may appear to be manifesting. Okay, I've been working towards this, improving on this, and it really should be working out, shows potential. All of a sudden, that potential could fall. And if you have, there's not much you'll be able to do to change it. But something good will come of it. Jupiter will leave you with something to say, okay, at least I have that. Okay. Or at least I had this good thing came from it. It's not all bad. Okay. Um, and because of the moon being in the Pushan Aditya, definitely wherever this eclipse is falling, you're going to have to tighten your belt a little bit. Because things are not going to manifest as abundantly as expected. When, Pushan is not an aditya of, external abundance. It's an aditya of internal abundance. It's a human capacity to, nourish oneself, be okay, even though the outside things aren't quite working out. Okay. So I don't consider this like a horribly nasty eclipse that's going to cause great travesties. I think it's an eclipse for the people it hits that's going to show them, all right, you've been working on this. You thought had this. You thought you had it all together. You thought you knew everything you needed to know. You thought you were ready for this and it was really going to work out. It's not really so. You still have a step to go on your journey. You still have to figure some things out. And the abundance that and the potential that was appearing isn't quite going to manifest. But there's something good with the Jupiter here. It's good enough. So yeah, it's a disappointment. It's a letdown. But at least I have this part, and I actually having this good stuff that Jupiter brings. It does give me, enough to make this venture worthwhile. Okay, now. We need to study the actual eclipse to see how that's going to be modified, the current eclipse. And remember, this is going to impact wherever you find this, okay? In whatever, in whatever sign, whatever house, with whatever planets this is landing on. That's the feeling along those things. Okay. Now, the current eclipse is happening in, like I said, 15 Pisces. That puts it in the Datta Aditya, who's the foundation and the supporter. Okay. And I am always going to be adding some Aditya information now that I'm teaching the Aditya class so that people can learn more about that. So this lunar eclipse happening in the Datta, the foundation, shows that if it's affecting you, there might be an element to, one of the things where you have to tighten your belt, where the potential is not as great as you expected, is in the foundations. Either maybe your own foundations, maybe some of your financial foundations, maybe the foundations of something you're working on, maybe something you're trying to develop a foundation for something. Say you're starting out with college, and you say, okay, I'm going to I'm going to go and learn my foundations, my basics. So whatever it is that we're building on or starting to build or taking care of, or helping because it's not something that's self-actualized yet. It's not mature, so you have to take care of it. This eclipse is going to have to do with that. It has to do with foundation. So if this falls in your 7th house, it's like the foundations of your business, the foundations of your relationship. By business, I mean buying and selling, trade. It might be the foundations of your relationship. If it's happening in the 10th house, it might have to do with career foundations, whatever. If it's in the 6th house, it might have to do with your health foundations. Maybe they're not as promising and strong as you were hoping or expecting them to be. So basically, a key word with this particular eclipse is, showing the reality of how strong your foundations are. Okay, and whatever it is that you're working on building, and again, whatever house that falls in. Okay. It's in the 9th house. It might be the foundations of your knowledge and information and your teacher's foundations. And you might find, well, I need more than that. There's something good there because of the Jupiter, but there's going to be a bit of a lack of potential there. And that's not a negative thing. See, with this eclipse, original cycle being in the Pushan Aditya, with this moon over here in Pushan Aditya, it basically means that this eclipse is not about the external. So it's about, okay, how about your own internal foundations? It's always about internalizing, being okay, even when the world is lacking somewhat. Okay? We don't have Saturn or Neptune influencing this particular eclipse. Pluto doesn't influence it in a really negative, doesn't really influence it. Uranus doesn't really influence it. So we have an eclipse for the first time in a while that's free from Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus. And that's kind of nice because that means it's a bit of a breather eclipse. Okay. When you get those three planets involved in an eclipse, things can just happen that are very shocking or very surprising or like unbelievable. Just augments the shock of the eclipse basically. Not having those there, it's going to be a much more, whatever happens, it's going to be a much more gentle thing. It's not going to shock you to the core the way an eclipse does when we have these outer planets involved. Okay. The nice thing is Jupiter down here in Cancer is aspecting the eclipse strongly. So great. We have a Jupiter aspect. So there's always, and as far as this cycle is concerned, this is as good as this eclipse can get. Okay. Jupiter there is going to really make this not that disappointing of an eclipse as it could potentially be. I remember this eclipse, the last time this happened back in 2007. Oh, to figure out what to expect from this eclipse, you can go back to when this eclipse happened before, okay, which was around, September 20th or so to September 27th of, actually, I'll take a moment and look that up. Okay, the last time this eclipse cycle hit was October 28th, 2007, and it fell at, looks like, 4 degrees, 46 minutes, I believe, of Pisces. So it was the beginning of Pisces. And, I remember that one landing, and it was a much more difficult eclipse. And there's some more difficult factors there. For instance, there's a Mars square. The Jupiter is not impacting as nicely. And so look back to that date and get an idea of the theme of this eclipse. Okay. That date again is August 28, 2007. Whatever happened back then, there'll be a continuation of that theme in the current eclipse. Okay. Okay. The other planet we have going for us here is Mercury. Mercury's opposite the moon. It's aspecting that moon aspect. Mercury is a friend to the moon. It likes to help it out. Mercury's not getting eclipsed. He is combust because he's close to the sun, of course, but it has some force to help the moon. And so the Mercury there is giving you some options. Mercury does the opposite of what Saturn does. When Saturn is involved in an eclipse, there's nothing you can do, just accept it. And if you try to do something, you're just going to muck it up. That's the nature of this eclipse cycle. But in this particular eclipse, we do have Mercury influencing the moon, which means if you use your head, you use your brain, and you think things through clearly, and you look at your options and work towards the best option, that you'll be able to make the most of this. So that helps with this eclipse. It means you're going to learn some things from it, be able to apply them, and make things work better. Okay, so it's not a stuck, restrictive eclipse in that sense. So, and again, this is bearing on the foundations, on Data Aditya. What are you bearing? What are you building? What are you the foundation of? What are the foundations in your life relevant to the house it's in? There's those foundations who are going to be somewhat disappointed, but you have room to improve them. You have to think and try different options. And if you're dealing with other people through this eclipse, it's about communicating different options and possibilities with them. And Jupiter is, like I said, is helping out, making this eclipse as good as it can get. So I think that it's simply not looking too scary to me. No outer planets. We got a nice Jupiter. Just the nature of this eclipse is about, okay, what was possible, the full reality of that, the full potential. not really going to be realized in this cycle. But in this particular Jupiter cycle, the potential is going to be much greater than it was. Okay, but there's still going to be something where you're feeling like, ugh, not quite everything I was hoping for. Okay, so wherever this eclipse is falling, okay, let's say it falls in your seventh. You go, okay, the foundations of my relationship, are not everything I hoped for. I got to tighten my belt of love and companionship a bit because I'm not getting everything. But Jupiter's here saying, but really overall, I'm doing pretty good. It's worth actually keeping. So the Jupiter here is going to help a person appreciate what the opportunity is to this eclipse, what it's actually giving, and shows that it's not something to throw away. So you won't be throwing away the house this eclipse falls in, but you'll be going, dang, I was hoping to have that. Guess I'm going to have to work that out in myself, okay, which is the nature of this foundation eclipse, okay? And if you use your head, use your Mercury, and you approach it intelligently, observe, you'll be able to find areas of improvement to make your foundation more secure in whatever area of life this eclipse is hitting. Okay? So I think it's a pretty simple eclipse. They usually are. What makes them involved and detailed is what they're hitting in your chart. But I don't see this as a doom and gloom. I see this as, okay, time for some self-nourishment, time to see the reality of your foundations in respect to the house this is happening in. And you will find there's plenty to be appreciative of, and there's nothing here to throw away or get rid of during this eclipse. Okay? Now, this eclipse is followed by the solar eclipse 2 weeks later. That solar eclipse is also going to impact you. This lunar eclipse is going to run from about, it's on September 7th. So we have to go 4 weeks before that. That takes us to about August 9th. So from August 9th until 28 days after this, until about October 5th, we're in the window of this eclipse. And these things can happen anytime during this window. Okay? And then we have the solar eclipse in 2 weeks. We're not in the window of the solar eclipse yet. That'll start, or let me think. The solar eclipse is happening on September 21st. In about 5 days, we'll be entering the window of the solar eclipse. So that will do different things based on that, and I'll analyze that in a few days for everyone. We're already 10 days into this lunar eclipse period. So anything that's happening along those lines so far is due to this lunar eclipse. Once you need to watch the solar eclipse video so you know, okay, this is the solar eclipse, this is the lunar. They will give different effects, and you want to make sure you interpret the right effects. So see what's being hit most significantly by both of these eclipses. And as a preview, I will tell you that the solar eclipse is happening at the very end of Virgo. It looks like 28 degrees of Virgo. That's tropical Virgo. So if anything around the end of Virgo, very beginning of Libra, especially at the end of Virgo, that eclipse will impact you very strongly. Okay? And that video will be coming up soon. Thank you.